What is up, everybody? Sorry for making you wait. Some funny comments. Ralph Wilson Sr. on YouTube. How does Matt get a media pass when he never meets a deadline? I'm always responsible for us being late. It was doing a bunch of different things. Ryan and I were, this is the first time we got a chance to chat today. So we're going over some of our plans, and sometimes we'll take you inside the football coverage a little bit even more so. This is Shout a Buffalo Bills football podcast, brought to you as always by Topps Friendly Markets. Gear up for game day now through October 28th. Every time you use your Topps Bonus Plus card to purchase participating brands like Pepsi, Campbell's, Smithfield, and so many more, you're automatically entered for a chance to win hot prizes to elevate your food game. You might also win a jersey every time Buffalo scores a touchdown. For complete details, visit topsmarkets.com/red zone. Ryan Talbot, we got a lot to get to tonight. Some, the final thoughts as we kind of move through reaction from Monday night. We'll get to all of that, some of the things that people are saying. How are you, my friend?
I am doing great. I am looking forward to being up in Buffalo this weekend, Matt, for obviously the home opener, but we also have a pretty big event on Saturday night.
We are going to be live at Wingnuts North Buffalo. And this is a little bit of an audible because we had originally planned to have the debut show at Wingnuts Amherst at 1402 Millersport Highway, but it's not ready yet. They're still working on that location. So we were going back to Froth. Wingnuts North Buffalo, 700 Military Road. Write that down right now so you don't go to the wrong location. 700 Military Road. This Saturday at 6 p.m. We are so excited. Listen, this is a game where a lot is on the line, Ryan. I mean, coming off of a loss in a division where the Jets sit at 1-0, the Dolphins sit 1-0. This is a Raiders game that if you're looking at the first 6 or 8 games of the schedule, you can make an argument it's the most winnable of all of them. So we're going to talk and dive into this thing on Saturday night. We hope everybody comes out to hang out and to hear the show and to talk some Bills.
Yeah, coming off of a loss is, you don't want to say must win in week 2, but the Bills have to rebound, and they've been one of the best teams in the league coming off of losses the past few years. I'm anticipating a good performance after a letdown on Monday Night Football in New Jersey. Some plays and some points that they left on the field and didn't quite execute. So I think it's going to be a great atmosphere at Froth on Saturday night. It's going to be an even greater atmosphere at Highmark Stadium because it is going to be rocking there on Sunday.
So let's get into some of the things that have kind of percolated over the last 2 days since Monday Night Football. I want to get into some what I think is really good analysis on what the Bills and Josh Allen, what we saw happen with them on Monday night. We'll get into that in a moment. I thought they were really interesting, some commentary on that. The Michael Irvin situation is one that I wanted to bring up because Stefon Diggs actually discussed it today when he went on the Voncast over on the Bleacher Report app. Michael Irvin was on with his new show with Skip Bayless and Richard Sherman and Keyshawn Johnson, and he was ultra critical of Stefon Diggs' sideline discussion with Josh Allen, where he's kind of pointing to his head. And, Michael Irvin claimed that made it seem like from the outside looking in that he's calling Josh Allen dumb, which is crazy because I don't think anybody inside that building would ever get that sense. And Stefon Diggs went on to explain on the podcast that when he says play smart, he's going there and just reminding everybody of the things that they probably worked on all week at practice. When he goes up to offensive linemen, he says play smart. Don't have any holding penalties. I mean, we saw how much a false start penalty from Spencer Brown affected the game in overtime on Monday night. And I think Diggs just goes up to everybody and tries to be the kind of leader, the kind of captain he was. And he basically said, I don't know what Michael Irvin is talking about. And then he went on to say, sometimes, football is a very opinionated based thing. Everybody's got their takeaway on X, Y, and Z, but kind of joked around like, Michael Irvin, you were running them routes 40 years ago. But, all right, old man. That's, I think, what he said. But I don't have a problem with Diggs or Sean McDermott calling Josh Allen out when he's not delivering the way that a franchise quarterback should. I completely disagree because if he's going to go out there and throw 3 interceptions, and we'll get into what Josh said about that today in a little while, somebody's got to say something, right? It's like what we were talking about a couple of days ago with Ken Dorsey, like maybe being a little bit more demonstrative and demanding or holding him to a standard that can't happen.
Yeah, I'm perfectly okay with Stefon Diggs doing that. And he's done it with, like he said, he does it to everyone. He tells everyone to be smart. Sean McDermott in press conferences before and after games has talked about the need to be smart on the field, protect the football. This is nothing that we have not heard before. And, you look at this Bills team, and you're right. You mentioned the false start by Spencer Brown and how penalties can hurt you. I'm sure that Stefon Diggs might have even said something to Matt Milano, the penalty that he had after the interception that drove them from the 35 to the 50. I know they got 3 points on that drive, but maybe they could have gotten 7 with that starting position. It is all about being smart on the field, executing, doing what's best for this team. And across the board, there was a lot of bad play, let down play. Obviously, Josh Allen first and foremost, but absolutely no problem with what Stefon Diggs did in that moment. No problem with Sean McDermott telling him to be smart. This was a football team, a defense that was holding the Jets in field goals or nothing else pretty much for a while. They had a 10-point lead at halftime. If they would have protected that football, they would have left New Jersey 1-0. So no problems whatsoever with what either of them said here. And it just seems like the media kind of bring things up and trying to maybe start some things again between Allen and Diggs and at least making it perceived that way.
Yeah, and I think Josh Allen's approach to all of this, it's healthy. He basically came out and said, "Listen, this isn't the first time I've thrown 3 interceptions a game, and he will hopefully plays long enough where it's not the last." I mean, it is just a part of his game, Ryan. Like he does take chances, but I think like the difference Monday night was the particular types of throws he was trying to make, ones that there wasn't really a good outcome. Those 2 deep balls, when you're thrown into double coverage against a defense that is this good, I saw a stat put out or an article. Actually, I wish I saw it in the timeline and I didn't bookmark it or retweet it so I could find it later. And that's my bad. But it was one from one of the national folks, maybe at the Ringer. I'll find it out and I'll credit him. But it was talking about just how the league has adapted to elite quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and how defenses have taken away the deep ball. Teams are having to adjust and dink and duck down the field because teams refuse to let you beat them that way. It's been that way for a couple of years, the way that Patrick Mahomes and even Josh Allen have kind of set that standard. So it's like when you know that going into a game, you're facing the Jets. You have to be ultra aware of that moment and of those kinds of plays and just completely remove them from your arsenal. And I know that's probably tough for Josh Allen. He's got the right mindset moving ahead, but he has to be more self-aware in the moment.
Yeah. So when you mention, maybe this won't be the last 3 interception game, I have no problem if it's 3 interception game where he throws it off of a Bills player, it bounces up in the air and he gets intercepted. Those are interceptions that happen to all quarterbacks that, we saw it happen to Patrick Mahomes on opening night and go for a pick 6. The interceptions against the Jets, though, like you said, they were simply brutal. There's no other way to put it. The first one, he rolls to his left and it looked like he had plenty of room to run and pick up the first down. Instead, he just throws it into double coverage, and you knew the outcome as soon as the camera panned downfield and you saw what was about to happen. He had Diggs on a 3rd and 2 play going across the middle, looking like he was open. He had guys that he could have dinked and dunked to, and it's something that he has to get in his mind. I need to do this. I shouldn't always be going for the home run ball. I shouldn't always be going for the big play unless it's open, unless there's a step downfield and there's not that double coverage. I need to be smart with this football because it could cost the team like it did on Monday night. So a learning experience. Hopefully it's the last 3 interception game for some time or maybe in 2023 in general this season. But, it is part of his game for sure.
Super chat from our good buddy Kyle Gauger, who I believe is a Shout Insider subscriber, which Thank you, Kyle. You are the man. He said earlier in the show, everyone here knows better than to listen to the national media's opinion on the Bills. Only Bills opinions I opt for are right here from these two. We appreciate you, Kyle. His super chat is, what do you guys think about Ken Dorsey coming down from the press box onto the field? Not saying this is the solution to the problems, but could it help? And, Ryan, I think this is interesting from, you go back a couple years ago, and I can't remember, I think I saw it floating around on the Twitter timeline the last couple of days, early in Josh Allen's career, when Brian Dable came and sat with him on the bench and scolded him about some of the decisions he's making. I do think there might be something to Kyle's point here from an accountability perspective. I'm also interested to know, we don't know a lot about the dynamic between Joe Brady and Josh Allen, right? Like, Joe doesn't come up a lot when Ken Dorsey talks about it. I mean, I'm thinking I might ask Ken about that tomorrow when we get a chance to talk to him before practice. And how has Joe Brady kind of fit into a role that Ken had for 3 years and obviously thrived in, that he ended up getting promoted to be the offensive coordinator? And then how hard is it to have that communication from the booth down to the sideline? Dorsey spent 3 years on the sideline with Josh Allen. He's got a relationship with him already, but does that distance kind of impact the ability to kind of adapt in game?
I think it could. The clip you're talking about was against the Patriots, if it's the same one I'm thinking of. And I think it was maybe a 3 interception game in that one too. And, to put it kindly, I think Brian Dable MF'd him up and down on the bench there, letting him have a piece of his mind. And it's something that I think resonated with Josh Allen, and man, this guy's right. I do need to settle it down. And it might've been the same game where he said that was the turning point in his career as well. Mm-hmm. Dable had a way to get through to the players. And, I know that he's coming off of a terrible loss of his own in New York, but he did build up those relationships where it wasn't always positive things 24/7. If you made a mistake, he was the first to tell you. And it could be that maybe that's not Ken Dorsey's style or approach. Not everyone is the same in how they communicate. And that doesn't mean that the way he communicates with Josh Allen is wrong either. But either he or Joe Brady need to figure out a way that they can get through to Josh Allen when these mistakes are piling up and say, listen, this is the last thing we should be doing or you should be doing. It's not helping this team. This is not a game that's a shootout that's back and forth. We just need to be smart with the football. But he's still a second-year offensive coordinator with Dorsey. He was more comfortable up in the booth last year. It might be something with the level of comfort, the approach of seeing the game from up above. There is something to that. But if he's not on the sidelines, then I think you do need Joe Brady down there, and Brady needs to come up with some kind of system where he can really get through to Allen when these mistakes pile up, when he has these moments. It just shouldn't be on Josh. It shouldn't be on the players. Sean McDermott has a ton on his plate calling the defense now. They need some sort of system in place.
Yeah, and the dynamic of Dorsey is very interesting because, I watch him on the sidelines during training camp, during the practice setting. He is pretty fiery. And then you think back to the year. I don't think there was ever a clip of him while he was on the sideline with Josh, while he was the quarterback's coach, that went super viral. But I think when you're asking the quarterback to do, and who knows, maybe there is a dynamic where he's yelling at him in the headset or on the phone or whatever the dynamic is. I mean, there's a lot of times we see a very stoic Josh Allen on the sideline. Maybe that's part of the exchange, but I just think, I don't know. It's one game too. I don't think you need to overreact. The Bills had a lot of success last year. They scored a lot of points. I just think it comes down to being able to find a stream of communication to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. But also interesting to note, Sean McDermott said, I think it was today, we talked to him 2 days in a row, so the days are kind of mixing together with what he said and when he said it. He said that the conversations are ongoing with Josh, but you can only have so many conversations. At the end of the day, he's the one out on the field and he's the one that has to do it. And I think all these different things, sometimes you just need a very over-the-top reminder about something that you're trying to do and implement, that you need to work harder to implement it, right? I don't have an example off the top of my head, but Josh Allen said all offseason, I got to take better care of the football. And he goes out and does as far away from that as you can be. That's where Josh Allen was against the Jets. And maybe that's the kind of thing that helps him reel it back in moving forward.
Yeah, it could be. And years ago, it's exactly what happened against the Patriots, where he realized he was hurting the team more than helping in those moments, in those situations. Bills fans can only hope that history repeats itself, but Allen is also not a young quarterback anymore. He's been in this league long enough where he shouldn't need necessarily to have Ken Dorsey or Joe Brady or anyone else come and tell him, you need to knock this off. You need to stop this. He's a veteran QB. He's viewed as one of the top quarterbacks in this league. At some point, the responsibility falls on his plate, and he needs to self-correct. So it's something he's capable of doing. It's something where with this Raiders game at home this week, the Washington game the following week, I think there's a good chance for him to really turn those mistakes around and put together two really good outings. But we need to see it, though, first and foremost.
I also think we could put the Stefon Diggs storyline a bit to bed here. I think everything that's happened since the start of training camp has, turned the page, and, he seems to be all in. I think he knows he needs to be all in for this season and beyond. And there's no getting out of this arrangement. And I think like some of the stuff that's continuing to kind of happen nationally, like saw some of the Jason Whitlock stuff last week, and it's just like you kind of roll your eyes at all of it. But I did want to mention a couple national media members that had really good commentary on the aftermath of the Monday Night Football game. One came from somebody that in the past I have been critical of, but Dominique Foxworth was on with Mina Kimes, and I thought his commentary on Josh Allen's game was amazing. He basically called him Superman, right? Like he's this player that can do all these amazing things, but sometimes, especially in a game like when you're playing a Jets defense that's so good, you got to go get the cat out of the tree, or you got to go, walk the old lady across the street or whatever. There can't be any casualties in that moment. That's the thing that he used. And I thought that was really smart of him, because like, that's the way that I think Josh Allen has to approach it. You can do all these great things, but sometimes you have to do things without making any mistakes. And sometimes there's going to be casualties. You mentioned it, right? Why don't you use your Lex Luger line? Cause I thought that was really good.
So I said, you're not always fighting Lex Luthor when it comes to, being in the role of Superman. You don't always need to be ready for that big battle. Sometimes it is the more mundane, the getting the cat out of the tree, the helping the old lady across the street, as you mentioned. And early on in the game, it was kind of working for the Bills. It was a dink and dunk approach. They were moving the ball. Yes, they weren't necessarily finishing drives with touchdowns, but I thought that they were more efficient. It was promising, getting the ball out to Kincaid, getting the ball early on to Hardy, obviously James Cook being involved. I liked that look. It reminded me a little bit of, again, when they ended up bringing in Cole Beasley, and it was an opening drive that actually ended in a turnover, but it was like a 20-play drive against the Jets early on where it was dink and dunk, and they kept passing the ball. I like that approach. And then the more you hit those short passes, the greater the opportunity for the deep ball will be. It just wasn't there on Monday night against the Jets. They played it very well. Like you said, in both of those situations on those really far passes down the field, it was a no-win situation. It was double coverage. It was something where you made Stefon Diggs become a defender on his play. I thought he did a good job of knocking Whitehead's hands down. He did it maybe a split second too soon, and Whitehead was able to recover and intercept that ball. But there will be times where Allen's going to be able to take a shot this year downfield, and he'll hit on them. It just, those opportunities weren't present, and I didn't really understand what he was thinking in the moment on either of those deep balls specifically.
Dom Bromstead, with a super chat. Is Matt Barkley the answer to get Josh refocused? I don't know how important the quarterback room getting bolstered is, because Kyle Allen is somebody that, talking to Jordan Palmer on that podcast last week, he really mentioned how important Kyle was going to be for that quarterback room. Knows Josh well. They're very close. I think that dynamic is already covered with him in the quarterback's room. I think it comes down to the coaching staff. I think it comes down to, Joe Brady and Ken Dorsey, some combination of the two. And it's interesting because I don't want to speculate. I'd rather ask Josh about this before putting it out into the universe. But I do wonder, like, when you have two younger coaches like that, right? Like, and who knows? I mean, Kyle Shanahan's a younger style coach. Sean McVay, there's tons of them across the league. But sometimes when you look at a guy like your buddy, as opposed to like teacher student, if you will, I wonder if that affects anything. And like Brian Dable, they had both of those things going, right? Like there was that teacher student relationship. He developed him as a player, but they are also super close, FaceTiming and talking all the time. I don't really know enough about the Brady Allen dynamic to comment on it, but I don't necessarily think that Matt Barkley is the missing ingredient to all of this.
No, Barkley was great in the meeting rooms. We've heard that from players, the coaching staff, seeing things, breaking things down. But I don't think that he's the reason Allen was, unfocused or needed to be refocused in that game on Monday night. I'm sure Barkley sent him a text or something during or after the game as well. They're close friends now. But it's nothing that I think a quarterback in the quarterback room is going to change, especially when you look at who's there right now. Kyle Allen is one of his best friends, someone that he's known throughout his entire NFL career. And this performance still happened. So it kind of comes down to, like I said earlier, yes, I would like to see the offensive coaches kind of get in Josh's ear a little bit more in terms of, play with more steady, dink and dunk the ball, take what the defense is giving you. But at the same time, in my opinion, at least, it falls in the lap of Josh Allen. He's been in this league long enough now where he shouldn't necessarily need someone to redirect him at this point.
Carl Tommen dropping a super chat, one of our regular super chatters on the YouTube live show. Josh going deep is okay, but he needs to be on target. He overthrew a Hardy by 5 yards, and Diggs tried to knock the ball away. Both had no chance, only Jordan Whitehead, which you alluded to that earlier. Thanks, Carl, for that comment. And I want to read it because I think that you're right there. I don't think that Josh Allen's ever going to take the deep ball out of his game. You just have to be smart about it. I mean, the Pittsburgh game in the preseason, he had a beautiful deep ball to Gabe Davis down the left sideline. And you're not going to face an elite defense like this against the Jets every time. And that's why in those games, you just have to be smarter game plan wise. And listen, they did execute it to a degree. I mean, if you look at some of the usage and some of the places they won, and we're going to talk about this, maybe we can kind of transition into it. I wanted to talk about Orlovsky too. We can get to that in a minute. The balls to Dalton Kincaid, the balls to Diggs especially, that one play to Gabe Davis over the middle. There were some good moments. There were some good throws to James Cook. Latavius Murray had a nice little play where that little flip pass and he got a first down there. There were some good moments in the passing game against a team where you just have to guard against big mistakes. And they did that for all the times except when they didn't, and that's what cost them.
Yeah, and you mentioned some specific players and moments, and that 3rd and 2 interception. I actually would have liked Murray to get the handoff on that. That was kind of like the Murray drive. He catches that pass and he kind of moves the chains. He gets a run, I think, or maybe 2 runs, and he has the 8 yards there. He was running physical. He's obviously one of their bigger backs, someone that maybe the Jets defense at that point late in the game was a little bit more tired than they were early, although they just have some absolute beasts on that front with Quinn and Williams and company. But little decisions like that, they have to find ways to get players involved a little bit more. I like the usage of Stefon Diggs, but they also need to find ways to get Dalton Kincaid more touches. We saw how efficient he was. All 4 of his targets were caught. Gabe Davis wasn't nearly targeted enough, in my opinion. I feel like going into game one, you probably could have schemed some things up for him a little bit better. But it's one game out of a long season, and there was a lot of positives that I took out of this game plan from Ken Dorsey and company as well. So, you have to take the bad here, especially in a loss, but there were some good things that came out of this game as well.
If you want some good things to come out of your weekly Bills experience, you're going to want to sign up to be a Shout Buffalo Bills insider on the text line right now, 716-528-6727. That'll get you a 2-week free trial. If you really want it, really want to get involved, whispers, send me a DM at Matt Parrino on Twitter. Email me, mparrino@nyup.com. I'll give you 1 month free. Why not? 1 month free to check it out. See what all the noise is about. We've heard a lot of chatter. A lot of people are pretty excited about the Shout text line, which is now brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call at 716-852-1234 or check out litrolaw.com. Shout out to the Litro Law Group and Carrie C. Beyer, now officially sponsor of the Shout Insider text line. Ryan, let's talk about Dan Orlovsky for a minute, because I thought it was he played in the league. Okay, this is a former player that retired a few years ago, longtime backup quarterback, a guy that's been in a lot of backup quarterback rooms, shared a lot of those stories over time. And he said if he was Josh Allen's coach, he would sit down with him in a room and say, listen, it's time to grow up. Like this is the kind of behavior that literally flies in the face of winning, which is something you say you're all about and the team is all about. Like sometimes you get into this, like, I don't want to say coach speak, but these things that players say all the time about being ultra competitive and doing all this, team building because the main goal is the main goal and everybody wants to win. And it's like, you almost did things in that game to try and actively not win. And so I think having it put that way is something that I think is healthy for him, for lack of a better term, just because sometimes you have to realize that not being the hero, not being the guy that does it all, that's okay too.
Yeah, listen, for as many wild and outlandish national media takes there were in the offseason, there were after this game, there were some really good ones too. And I agree with Orlovsky. I mean, everything he did flew in the face, that being Josh Allen, of what he said going into the season. I need to protect the football better. I need to make sure that, we're scoring points. We're not giving the team the ball back. And it's not helping this team win when you do that. I said on the post-game show on Tuesday morning, that if this was a shootout game against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs or the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow, and you're talking back and forth, 30-point outing, I would get Josh Allen, throwing the ball down the field, chucking it, doing what he had to do to try to keep this team in the game. It was a completely different situation, Matt. It was 13-3. You were in control. You just needed to manage the game, manage the clock, maybe ice the game with another field goal or two. A touchdown obviously would have gotten the job done as well. And instead, you gave the ball up. You coughed, you fumbled it away deep in your own end. You did everything that you said you weren't going to do. So it's one game. We've said this. We don't want to be dwell on it too long. It is Raiders week, essentially. But now it's up to Allen to really put this into motion, show that those words weren't hollow and that he is going to do his part to protect the football, to be that leader for this team on offense and to help guide them now on a winning streak that they need to start stringing some games together here early on in the season.
Kyle Gauger throwing down another super chat. This dude is a subscriber to the Shout Insider group, dropping $3.99 a month, and he's throwing a little cherry on top of the super chats. We appreciate you, brother. Pro tip, you can sign up your friends and family for the Insider text as well. Makes a great birthday or holiday gift. And if you email me and you get a month free trial, so you can sign them up, give them a month's free trial. We'll be on our way. Thanks, Kyle. We appreciate you, man. Let's talk one more thing before we move on from Josh Allen, because I know that has monopolized the podcast so far, and I feel like it has to. It's still a huge storyline, and I think for him to come out and play that way, I thought was shocking. It was surprising, and I do like the way that he's approaching it, and I also do like something that Stefon Diggs said on the podcast about. He went on the Voncast, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, and he said, listen, a couple of years ago, go back, and the Bills came out, and it was a stinker against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was, I believe, 2021. It was the year that they went to the divisional round, the 13 seconds game. 23-16 to the Steelers. Same exact style of game where the offense just really, really struggled. Now, Allen didn't throw any interceptions that game, went for 270 and a touchdown, but it was hard. It was a good defense that was getting a lot of pressure. If I remember correctly, 3 sacks and 5, 6, 7, 8 quarterback hits. So in the same ballpark. How did the Bills respond to that, Ryan? They went on a little bit of a win streak and came out, really clicking after that game. And that's what Stefon Diggs is expecting the Bills to do now.
And that year specifically, Matt, I mean, they got hot at the right time of the season. They were one of the hottest teams in the league during the playoff stretch. And we all know how that ended against Kansas City. But they, arguably that was the best football that they've played under Josh Allen late in the season. So a dud in week 1 does not mean that you're going to see that type of play over the course of the season or when the games, really matter come playoff time. It was a good comparison. Sometimes you start out the year and it doesn't go the way that you thought it was going to in week 1, but it's a long season. There's a great opportunity here to bounce back these next few weeks before you have another divisional matchup against the Miami Dolphins. So take care of business against the Raiders in Washington, and then you can make a statement against a Dolphins team that is getting a lot of national praise and love after their, offensive outburst in week 1.
Another question that we got here from Kyle, or I don't think it was from Kyle. Who was it? Saw it in here somewhere. I'm sorry if I didn't give you the shout out. You can blame me on social media, tweet at me, whatever you want. But it was a good question asking if Spencer Brown, who struggled, and we could talk about him in a moment, if there's any chance of him getting replaced by Germain Ifedi.
No. Short answer, not yet. I mean, if Eddie has not been here very long, if this was something where, they're bringing him in because he has years of play under Aaron Kromer, that would be one thing, but that's not the case. This is not someone who's familiar with the system. I don't think they brought him in here in the first place to compete with Spencer Brown. I think they wanted a veteran who could play at right tackle if there was an injury, if they were in a pinch, maybe a swing tackle option. He needs more time. He needs to get acclimated to the system. Spencer Brown was not great on Monday Night Football. That's, that's not breaking news. We all saw the first sack, I want to say, that Josh Allen took. It was essentially credited to Spencer Brown since he was in Josh Allen's lap on the play, getting pushed back by John Franklin Myers. And Myers really did bully him a few times on Monday night. But we also saw a lot of good from Spencer Brown this summer at training camp. He had one really bad practice, but the rest was pretty good. He had a pretty strong preseason. I want to at least, see him now against a defensive line that's not as dominant these next few weeks. And listen, Max Crosby is on that Raiders line, and he's going to probably be licking his chomps about playing against Spencer Brown. But what do the Bills do? How do they adjust? Do they keep extra blocking back? Can Brown rebound? I'm not ready to move on from him yet for a former first-round pick who has essentially been a journeyman as of late in the way he's played. But if Brown continues to struggle, yes, it's at least on the table that eventually it could happen.
Listen, there's a reason. I like what the player is in Ifedi, right? Like, former first-round draft pick, has played a lot of snaps in the NFL. But I think that it's a lot to ask of anybody coming over with no training camp, no offseason program, to learn a very complicated system, to learn a very complicated, scheme from an offensive line only perspective. I mean, guys have talked about it. Remember Roger Saffold said after last season, guys are never really right their first year with Aaron Kromer. It takes an offseason to really get used to the techniques that he teaches, what he asks his players to do. So I think Ifedi is more of a let him get comfortable. He's a veteran. He's played a lot of football, and try to let Spencer Brown get comfortable and see what it looks like as the season moves along. I don't anticipate any move happening. Interesting. Let's talk about the offensive line in general from this game, Ryan. I was looking through some of the PFF grades from a pass blocking perspective. It was a huge game for Deion Dawkins. Like going back and watching him play, like he did a really good job holding up against those quick, fast edge rushers. Like I thought that, Josh didn't have to deal with a lot of stuff on his left side. Connor McGovern, who actually didn't grade out great as a run blocker, right? But this is what we knew about him, right? Like
Right.
he was not going to come over here and help you in the run game. He did get graded out at 70.6, which was the second highest pass block grade behind Dawkins, according to PFF. Then it went Osiris Torrance at 70.6. I know you have something to say about him. Mitch Morse at 63.1, and then Spencer Brown at 58.
Yeah, so Deion Dawkins, first and foremost, great game. We talked a little bit about our expectations for him this season. We both don't speak, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we both thought he had a down year last year for what we saw out of him. And there were some moments in the preseason that weren't even, that great at times. With that Steelers game, no one really played too great in that. He really did have a nice game against one of the best defensive lines in football from that blocking perspective. But the O lineman that stood out to me the most overall was Osiris Torrance. And when the Bills drafted Torrance, we knew that he was a guy that could get out in open space and was really good at run blocking. He definitely looked the part on Monday Night Football, and that's really promising. I know a lot of the guys on the Bills O-line, run blocking is not their specialty. It's not their strong suit. But having someone like that can kind of maul you, get out in there and block, it's promising, because if you can get a good block from Mitch Morse or from Spencer Brown on that side of the field, maybe that's where James Cook really rips off some great blocks. But in terms of pass protection, I thought Torrance was very strong as well. He allowed, I believe it was 3 hurries, 1 QB hit, something in that area. But to come into this league against, I would say, a top 2, top 3 defensive line, I think you could obviously make the case for Philly being number 1. Pittsburgh's up there. 49ers are up there as well. But the Jets are no slouch. They're no joke. And he held his own in his debut with the Bills. So really, really promising there. I like what I saw from Kincaid. So after we talked a lot about Brandon Beane and his draft history as of late, the first 2 picks really did show up and show out for the Bills in their debuts.
We mentioned this on the first show, but I think Kincaid needs to get more work. I think he needs to be featured more. Like in a game like that, you should have had at least 8-ish targets for a guy that works in the area of the field that he does. And I think at times, watching the game back, and I want to actually spend some time with the all 22, which I don't usually do, but I want to be able to see the full scope of the field, because one thing that I think that happened early in the game, you go back early in his career, what's the thing that Brian Dable used to say about Josh Allen was trying to get him into a rhythm early. And actually they were kind of getting into an early rhythm. A couple of those, tricky plays that they had to Deontay Hardy, I like the way that they were using him. But then on the 3rd down, it was a bang, bang play to Stefon Diggs after he hit him in stride, quick drop, look, hit him on the first throw to him. Then the second one on the 3rd down, he threw it kind of behind him. I think he noticed double coverage at the last moment. And I feel like that subconsciously even might go into his head and be like, okay, they're really covering the short stuff. And maybe that's what pushed him subconsciously to pushing the ball down the field more. But maybe it's about fighting through that, sticking with that part of the game plan, because when they did go to Dalton Kincaid in any kind of space, he put the boom on some defenders. And that's what you kind of wanted him to see. And I don't think they used him enough.
Yeah, and Sean McDermott said this week that he wants to see someone kind of step up as that wide receiver number 2. And I know he's a tight end, but Kincaid can be that guy. The Bills played so much out of the 12 personnel in their debut that you're not going to see a lot of snaps and reps for those depth wide receivers behind Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And I think Gabe Davis is a fine number 2 receiver. There are going to be games where he gets a lot of targets, a lot of looks, and he puts together a really strong stat line. But Kincaid needs to start already, just 1 game in. We need to start seeing an uptick in his targets, because we know about his hands. We know how good he is there. But he was able to pick up chunks of yards after the play. The short passes and rumble down the field where he lowered the shoulder. They gave him 9, but when I watched that live, it looked like he made it over the first down marker. I'll go back and look at that play specifically again. I just liked a lot of what I saw out of him. So in terms of someone stepping up in that role opposite Stefon Diggs, it might end up being Kincaid as a rookie or Dawson Knox, because they're going to be on the field a lot this season. If that Jets game is any indication of the personnel that they're going to roll out on a weekly basis.
I want to talk about some other players on the defensive side. Going back and watching Terrell Bernard, I do think that some of the commentary that you had on him after the game was accurate. I mean, there were moments where he did get washed out of plays. Maybe he didn't read blocks properly. But I did see a few plays like I did live that I think were encouraging. And it's a jumping off point for a player that didn't play in the summer. I mean, Josh Allen talked about, maybe knocking off some of the rust after only playing 2 or 3 drives in the preseason. Bernard didn't have any drives. And I'm not trying to say Bernard's going to be the answer. Listen, he's a small player. At times when you're getting kind of, lost in the shuffle of all those big, tall trees on the inside there, it's a lot. I think that's a concern, but I also did think he was active. I did think that he was moving sideline to sideline pretty well. I thought when he did come in and make a couple plays, that was that one play where Taron Johnson kind of got run over. It was a really tough play. I was like, oh man, I was kind of watching out for a concussion or something there. He came in and kind of was the backup on that play and really blasted him. There were some nice moments for Terrell Bernard. I think, this week is going to be a really good test because Josh Jacobs is such a good running back.
Yeah, so when it came to Bernard, I did rewatch the game with him specifically in mind and kept an eye on him. I will say he got better late in the game. I thought that he improved down the stretch. I thought early on there were some really, really bad plays, as you mentioned, getting swallowed up. And listen, when you're 220, 225 soaking wet, and you're running into Mekhi Becton, I think you're going to get swallowed up 99 out of 100 times and get pancaked. But he did get better. And maybe that's a fact, or maybe that's due to his athleticism, his speed, the sideline to sideline. You're going against a lot of tired offensive linemen and offensive players at that point in the game. So I want to see him, though, against the Raiders. I want to see him against Washington and a few other games. I know there were a lot of fans calling on Christian Kirksey to kind of come right in here and save the day, so to speak. Kirksey will probably start seeing some elevations once they're comfortable with him in the system. And I wouldn't be shocked if after his elevations run out from the practice squad, the Bills immediately signed him to the 53-man roster. But I'm not ready to write off Bernard yet because I did think that he improved. And as you noted, the injury happened at such a tough time this summer, final training camp practice, I believe, of the year. And then he goes and he doesn't get to play at all in the preseason. Let's see him with a few more reps. If they want to elevate Kirksey and mix and match them at some point, so be it. But there were some encouraging signs late in the game against the Jets.
I want to encourage everybody to come out to 700 Military Road this Saturday night, 6 p.m. You get to meet Ryan Talbot. I mean, that is the main attraction, but you also get to eat delicious chicken wings, drink amazing beers, and they got a bunch. They're all up on the big chalkboard. And obviously talk Bills with Ryan Talbot and Matt Parrino. We will do a live show, of course, previewing Bills versus Raiders. And then we will, hang around, have a couple pops, not too many. Ryan, we can't have too many the night before.
No.
We got to go cover a football game.
That's right. That 8 o'clock alarm clock goes off pretty quickly there the night after these shows. And we have a job to do on Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon. So definitely have to be smart with it. But we are looking forward to the Bills Mafia showing up, hanging out after the show, and then obviously covering a big-time football game on Sunday.
You're driving with me, right? To the stadium?
Oh, yeah.
We're getting up early, buddy. We're getting up real early. Here's my question. What are you putting the odds at that I pick you up at the time that I say that I'm going to pick you up at? Like if I say I'll be there at 7:30 and what are you going to put the odds at? Would you say it's 5-1 that I actually make it there on time?
I'm putting my shoes on probably at 8 o'clock.
Wow.
Listen, we'll come up with a plan sometimes for these shows, and you'll be like, all right, 7:30, and then the next morning rolls around and it's like 7:50. He's like, how about 8 o'clock? Sorry, Matt. I'm sorry. Listen, I get it though. I don't have to do the hair in the morning. I don't have to put the product in and look the part. I just
juggling all these balls in the air.
I know.
I can't handle them all. Sometimes I drop them all. And then
I
I'm
get it.
15 minutes
So
later, an hour late. But yeah, you deal with me. You're a saint
no,
for that.
it's
My
awesome though.
what's
Now,
funny
how
is
early? How
what's
early you
funny
talk?
is
You're not talking Joe B early, are you?
yeah, we got to go early, dude. I have a
Okay,
feeling that
I'm
the
game for it.
traffic's going to be rough.
Mhm.
And my wife just texted me true saint, quote unquote, because she knows she's all too familiar with my clock management, if you will.
No,
Obviously, if we did like local reporters, like clock management, I would probably be at the bottom of the list. It's
no.
really bad.
Yeah, no, I love it though, and for the Bills Mafia not familiar, I really feel like Joe B, in addition to covering the Bills team, like I think he has the keys to unlock the stadium because he is there ridiculously early at times. I mean, like 7 a.m. sometimes for these games. So whenever we need to be there, I'm there. Can't wait.
That's what I'm going to do. Carl, I'm going to throw a big curveball this week. I'm going to say I'll be there at 7:45 and then show up at 7:30. And then I'm going to be honking the horn. So it wakes up everybody at the hotel. And if somebody comes out and complain, I'm like, I'm waiting for this guy. I'm waiting for the goatee over here, Mr. Talbot.
Oh man, I can't
I know.
wait. No matter
I can't
when,
wait
I'm
either.
ready.
I can't wait either. All right. A couple more things real quick. Ryan, I think AJ Epinesa should be inactive on Sunday. I texted this out in the group, and he was the only Bills edge rusher that didn't register a pressure on Monday night. And I don't think that's good enough. It's year 4. You had, let me look this up here. I have it. I had it up on my screen. He had a total of 19 snaps. 8 of those were pass rush snaps. Out of 8 chances, he couldn't record one single pressure. Shaq Lawson had 12 pass rush snaps and delivered 3 pressures. Leonard Floyd, 16, Russo, 17. Both of them had 5 pressures. Ryan, Ed Oliver had 6 pressures in this game. Ed
Yeah,
Oliver played himself a really good game. When you're talking about answers in the run game, I thought from a run defense perspective, him and Daquan Jones were really good. He was adding some pressure up the middle. I think you elevate or you activate Kingsley Jonathan on Sunday against the Raiders, and you what's difference between AJ Epinesa and Kyer Elam? You're telling Kyer Elam he's not good enough to have a jersey on game day. How are you not holding AJ Epinesa, who I like? I enjoy all my conversations with AJ. I'm just talking about a football perspective. You got to hold that accountable.
I agree with that completely, and here's why. The Bills already moved away from one draft pick being Boogie Basham, obviously, to keep a guy like Kingsley Jonathan because of the promise, because of the flashes that they saw. And week 1, you want to give AJ Epinesa a jersey because he's another former second-round pick. He's someone that you feel has earned the right to play. So be it. But when you deliver, an egg, so to speak, and you don't do much for this team, I think it's okay to say the following week, let's get Kingsley Jonathan in here. Let's see what he can do in a limited role, because let's face it, Leonard Floyd, as long as his legs are feeling fresh, I want him on the field.
Yes.
Greg Rousseau, obviously, is a young guy. His legs should be fresh. I want him on the field. But in that rotation, I'd rather get this young kid, this Kingsley Jonathan, who made enough of an impact the past 2 years that the Bills said, we don't want to lose this guy again in the waiver process. We need to get him on the 53 this year, unlike last year where they lost him to Chicago for a few months. Get him on the field. See what he can do. He high motor, never stops. I know, you hear those cliches all the time, but it is really true with Jonathan. He's always going nonstop, and I think he could especially make an impact in a limited role with those reps where he's going against tired offensive linemen by the time he sees the field.
I've been telling everybody for over a month now, going back to the start of training camp, to sign up to become a Shout Insider. That's because we have great conversations on there. And as it's growing, Ryan, there's well over 300 people now. It's harder to kind of to live in the day to day responding to everybody. But what I do think it's going to be great for the season is going to help bring interesting topics to the show, questions for the show that maybe we're talking around something, but maybe getting something more specific. And I think this kind of angle on the Josh Allen stuff is interesting. Brad Madden, who's a regular in the Shout Insiders, he threw along a question this afternoon. Topic of concern for tonight's show, maybe. Josh wanted to put on a show, and that's where the bad decisions came in. Might seem like a weird statement, but he tried to hurdle guys 6 yards from a first down. Is his superstar status going to his head? Love the guy, but it just seems like he can play boring and win, just like Mahomes has done in those grind games. Thoughts on this, Ryan? I'll start with the fact that has the superstar status gone to his head? I would push back against that a little bit. I don't think he's somebody that truly believes in his own like press clippings and his status. As a matter of fact, he kind of stiff arms a lot of that most of the time. Does he do a lot of commercials? Sure. But he actually mentioned it on his podcast with Jordan Palmer and Kyle Allen that a lot of those commercials don't take a lot of time. You do it and then you forget about it. A lot of it happened in the offseason. I think there might be a little something to the folks that take issue with maybe the commitment this offseason. I don't know a lot about what he did this offseason. He's talked a little bit about it, but he did go on to say that he's played every golf course known to man. Maybe I get having a hobby and loving, but he worked tirelessly most off seasons, working at his craft, trying to find ways to get better. And, if you ever take the foot off the pedal, I can get from a fan perspective, just wondering about that. Do I think that that's necessarily the case? I think that's a little bit too far to say. But I do think there is something to the way that he plays sometimes and like wanting to go. Is it always the play when you're out in space and running to try to hurdle over a guy? Probably not. Most of the time you should probably just slide. You know who I saw slide a ton on Sunday and threw for 400 plus yards? Tua Tagovailoa. Now it's a different situation. He's kind of got to slide. He can't take any hits, but that's a smart play most of the time.
Yeah, when it comes to on the field stuff, I mean, especially when he jumped and it was a long, the markers were well down the field and it was about a 6-yard gain and he dove into 2 players. That's not smart football. Slide, live for another day. There was a first down he picked up that he could have just run out of bounds and he picked up 2 or 3 more yards, but he collided with 2 Jets defenders. There are things like that, but real quick, just going back to the off season, and I don't know how much time he put into working on the mechanics, working with Jordan Palmer. Like you said, he mentioned playing a lot of golf. I think this past off season, the way that the season went for the Bills, the trauma that they went through with Damar Hamlin, with a lot of the going all the way back to the top shooting, everything that happened with Dawson Knox losing his brother Luke. There's just a lot. And I think after the way the season ended, clearing your head was something that maybe the coaching staff told Josh Allen and company to don't even think about football for a while. So if that meant hitting every golf course in America, by all means, go and do it. Clear your head. You are one of the elite quarterbacks in this league. And I don't want to take anything away from the commercials either. Like you said, a lot of these commercials, it's a one and done. I'm sure when he does the local spots, he's probably doing a few of them maybe at a time. So that's not a huge time commitment. He's not leaving practice and flying out to California, shooting a commercial and coming back in season or anything like that. I feel like the speak after the game of I have to be better, I'm over that. He needs to put it into motion. But at the same time, I don't want people overreacting to one bad performance in week 1 against a really good Jets defense when I think that he's going to have some really good performances these next few weeks.
And he bounced back pretty well from it today. Like I felt like the body language was much better. But I agree. Like even like the despondent look that he has sometimes on the sideline when things aren't going good, like you can't have that. You have to have an idea for how to fix it. And sometimes he looks like that little kid that came into the league that just, gets overwhelmed at times with it all. And that's okay. Like it's not like going to be the defining characteristic of his career. And he's had plenty of big time moments where he's engaged and he needs to demonstrate that more. And I'm really going to be watching his body language closely this Sunday and beyond, because to me, like, when things were going bad in Cincinnati, you knew they were going bad if you just turned on the TV and they panned Allen on the sideline and the way that he looked. Like sometimes you have to be the CEO of the team, the franchise quarterback, and you can't let it show that that's happening. You can't be so emotionally invested in the ups and downs. Josh Allen has said it best in the past, Ryan. Can't ride the roller coaster, right? So I'm going to be watching that closely. I think he figures out a way. My wife keeps texting me because she's got a real hot take on Josh Allen, but I'm not going to deliver it for her. She's going to have to deliver it on Saturday at Wingnuts when we're doing the show. I'll bring her right onto the show. She can drop the hot take. You better watch your tape though this week, babe. You got to watch the tape. You got to put in the tape, watch some tape from last season. I'm going to be really putting you through the ringer this Saturday. So come out to Wingnuts to watch the show. Husband and wife, discussing a tendency that she's picked up on Josh Allen. A little bit of a teaser there. Wow.
Cannot wait for that. And I do see some people in the commentary talking about Kyle Brandt's basement and Josh Allen appearing on that maybe too much. There is no more Kyle Brandt's basement. He announced this week that the show will not go on and that, he didn't say that it was anything with Josh Allen, but I think Josh Allen is committed to focusing on football and football only in season. And maybe that is a good thing for him. So, last year I thought it was fine. I thought it worked out nicely. Some good segments, the Bills played well. They won 13 games. I don't think there was a correlation there either, but just to kind of correct some things, Caitlin with a quick no. Just put some things in perspective. I don't think that Kyle Brandt's basement podcast had anything to do with Allen and struggles or anything like that.
All right. What else? Oh, one last thing. I don't think it needs to be made a huge deal because even if the penalty comes back or if he makes the tackle, the Jets probably kick a field goal and win. But Sam Martin should deserve some, attention for not only that attempt at a tackle, but an absolutely horrible punt. Like, you can't have that. I mean, he's a veteran guy. Like, you got to put that in the right spot. And there wasn't even weather, Ryan. That was a bit of a, bungled situation all across the board for them, return that. And those are the kinds of things, like, the games are going to get harder. And to me, that was the biggest takeaway too of that game, is like, this was a game you had to win because of the circumstances of the game. It was there on a platter. And you not only did Josh Allen, all the stuff we've covered so much on this show, so much on the last show, but like that moment, special teams, this team values special teams, and it didn't matter on that play.
No, and the special teams was actually pretty disappointing in the preseason as well. So the fact that it carried over the regular season is a concern. And when you mentioned that, I started laughing because I don't know, maybe he thought for a moment it was two-hand tap. I don't know what that tackle attempt was. It was like
two-hand tap.
It was like a jumping two-hand tap. Like, I'm going to get this guy with this forceful push, and just a terrible, terrible attempt overall at a tackle. But special teams, it's a little concerning that the struggles on coverage in the preseason kind of come over to the regular season. I agree with you, though. It was more on Sam Martin in this case in terms of where he put the football, not so much on the coverage, but things that we generally or typically have not seen from this unit under Sean McDermott in his tenure as head coach.
Here's something I got for everybody, Ryan. Saturday night, you coming out to Wingnuts? Watchers, viewers, listeners, if you bring a Tops breakfast pizza to us on Saturday night to enjoy with our wings and beer, I'm going to give you 6 months free to become a Shout Insider. Even if you're already a subscriber, I'm going to throw down 6 months free. We're going to take a picture with the Tops pizza. We're going to eat the Tops breakfast pizza. I want everybody to kind of experience it. And right now, let Tops do the cooking for you, and you'll be the real MVP. Perfect for game day or any days. Visit Tops Carryout Cafe. Hot to go, fresh, large cheese and pepperoni pizza, $15. Jumbo chicken wing 10 count, $14. Tops legendary breakfast pizza. Bring us one. 6 months free. Get yourself one for $20. $20. Still think that's a savings. I'll actually give you $20 so you don't have to pay for the pizza. Pizza or taco log 6 count, $8.49. Baby back rib sections, $5.99 a pound, plus sub sandwiches, wraps, apps, sides, and so much more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone for the complete menu of ready to enjoy fan favorites. I think that's it, Ryan.
All right. You can't beat a fresh Tops breakfast pizza either, Bill's Mafia. If you haven't experienced yet, you got to do it.
I thought you were going to have something funny, quippy to say there. Kind of.
Oh, no, I love it. I love the fact that you're throwing in 6 months for free with a Tops breakfast pizza. Always keeping me on my toes.
They always give me, they gave me us free control over the, what is it called? The trials. Like, we can make our own trials. So listen, we're going to get some off the wall ideas, get people into the insider group. We're so grateful to everybody that has joined it, it's participating in it. We think we're just scratching the surface of what this thing's going to be. And we don't know over the course of the season. It's great during training camp time because we could bring you all of that inside stuff, and into the season, it's going to change. You're just going to get our analysis more so. We're going to try to keep up as much as we can with the interactions. It's tough. I mean, Ryan, you were mentioning it. You went in there yesterday. At one point, there was like 150 messages that we had to try to respond to. So if we don't respond to everybody, don't take it personally. Keep sending those questions along. We'll eventually get it into either a show or respond, or even maybe craft an insider text to the whole group. We appreciate everybody. Enjoy your week. Saturday night, 6 p.m., Wingnuts, North Buffalo, 700 Military Road. See you.